Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming a very talented character actor. His name is Michael Monks, and he played one of the two dim-witted security guards in the 1991 cult classic sequel, Rock and Roll High School Forever. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about that. He was also in the Pop Warner football movie Little Giants. He was in the Dana Carvey vehicle Clean Slate. He was in the Garfield movie and so many others. And I want to talk to him about all that stuff. He's a journeyman character actor, and as a lot of you know, I love journeyman character actors. It's ironic that his name is Michael because today would have been my best friend Michael Kelly's birthday. He would have been 37, but he passed away at Thanksgiving time in 2014 of a car accident, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Spaz. I love you, man. I wish you're lucky you're not here right now, but you would have some hilarious commentary on the way the world was, because he was practically a comedian, just a really funny guy. I've known him since second grade. So yeah, here is my interview with Michael Monks. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show, sir.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. My day is just beginning, and this is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yes. So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on in your childhood?
Ironically, not so much. I did, the first play I really did was in ninth grade, and did the production of The Ugly Duckling, and it was a big deal because costume-wise, it was a bit of a Shakespearean sort of type thing, so Mom had to go out and find me purple tights to wear, and it was sort of a fun thing to have to deal with, just because she was out buying tights that would fit her son, not her daughter. So, and then I really, I was kind of intrigued by it, but never really put anything into it. And it wasn't until high school when I saw a production of Beckett's Endgame, that tiny little theater that the high school theater department was putting on. I sat there and I watched these actors be so emotionally exposed, and it freaked me out. I was so intimidated by it. And so I did none of that in high school. And then when I got to college, I was always intrigued by acting. And so I took an acting class, even though I was an engineering major, which I ended up getting my degree in. But, and I started to like it. And obviously I was drawn to it because, tapping into your emotional life was something that I had sort of shut off myself from as a kid, because I lost my father at a very young age, and sort of just emotionally I just shut down. So acting sort of calling me because it was what I needed to sort of allow myself to go through the experience of the grief that I sort of never allowed myself to do. And so I did productions in college, and I went to Colorado State University, and they did not have the theater department was open enough that even if you were a non-major, you could perform in the main stage productions, which was great, because a lot of dedicated theater programs at universities don't allow that. So I was able to perform in a lot of plays throughout my college career, even while I was pursuing my engineering degree. And it was then that I decided I wanted to be a professional actor. And the head of the theater department there had a connection to the neighborhood playhouse in New York City, which was Sandy Meisner's school. And when I graduated, I had a bunch of job offers from engineering companies all around the world, and and I'd been accepted to the Playhouse, and I wrestled back and forth what to do. And I remember thinking how I was going to feel when I hung up the phone after telling the Playhouse I was not coming, and I went, oh boy. So I went back to New York and studied with Sandy Meisner that first year out of college.
Wow. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Indiana, but raised in Denver. We moved to Denver when I was very little, so I grew up in Denver.
Wow. And so, was it much of a culture shock when you got to New York?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to New York, and, your perception of New York, at least mine, was just that it was, and certainly that is in Manhattan, that it's just all buildings and all, city, and was totally unaware of the level of parks in New York and some of the open space. But, it was exciting to go to New York and walk down streets you've heard your whole life of, Park Avenue, Madison Avenue. I mean, you always see them on Monopoly boards.
Yeah.
Broadway, that kind of stuff was just Times Square. It was just, I loved it, and, but it was a bit of a shock. So.
Yeah. Did any of your classmates in Sanford Meisner's class go on to become successful?
Of the ones that I studied with, I'm probably have the longest longevity of still being in it and performing in it and making my living at it. So, it's interesting because Nell Newman, Paul Newman's daughter, who went on to start the Newman Homes food company, was in my class at the Playhouse, and Tyrone Power Jr. was in my class.
Yeah.
And Ken Kirschavold's daughter, Liza, was in my class. So I had a lot of people from the industry that were in my class. But there are some people that were in my class that are currently still doing some regional theater. But the people that I studied with, I think I'm actively the only one that's doing film and television still today.
Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of people, they have classmates that go on to become hugely successful, or they stay regional,
Right, and whatever people's life journey, career path journey is, but whether it just isn't something that they want to pursue anymore, or their life takes a turn and they go somewhere else. But I've been very blessed to be working in the business for almost 35 years now, and consistently being able to do what I love to do.
Did you get to do any Broadway?
I never did Broadway, which is something that's still on the bucket list. I did, several off-Broadway, lots of off-Broadway. So, but I actually produced an off-Broadway play that I starred in along with Michael Chiklis. And that's where Michael met back in New York. And the guy who directed it had directed me in a play, and they had met at Boston University, where Michael went to undergrad. And, but yeah, I would love to do Broadway. Absolutely love. But I don't sing, or if I do, I sound like a dying calf in a hailstorm. So not something that anyone would pay to watch or listen to. But so obviously there's more musicals on Broadway than there are straight plays. And by the time I left New York, which was in the late 80s, even then, off-Broadway was almost inaccessible to somebody who didn't have film and television credits. And Broadway in and of itself, any role of substance was pretty much being cast with major stars, just because the cost of producing on Broadway had gotten so exorbitant that you had to have that guaranteed ticket sales that comes with bringing in a star name.
Yeah. Did you get there when the writer's strike happened?
I was, here in L.A.?
In L.A., yeah.
I was here for the writer's strike. I got here in 89. I moved to Los Angeles in 89 and lived through the commercial strike and a couple writer's strikes. And, as the industry has struggled with the consolidation of the, production, studios being bought out by, Fortune 500 companies and television production. All of a sudden, back in the day, NBC could not show an NBC production on their network because it was considered a conflict of interest because the airways are free.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unfortunately, that changed. That rule got rolled back during the Clinton administration. And so now, all of a sudden, ABC productions can be on ABC. And so you lost all these independent producers of television. And then when NBC was bought out by Universal, which was bought out by, the next conglomerate up, we had this compression of producers of material. And it has truly, I don't believe it's been good for anybody except the big companies, because it's just minimized the access to people to create their own content. Now, with Netflix and Amazon and all this, all of a sudden we have these whole new buyers of product, which has been great. Apple TV, and, well, again, those are huge conglomerates. They're owning it, but at least all of a sudden we have all these other places to exhibit material, streaming and online and stuff.
Yeah, it's a completely new ball game. And back when you got there was no internet.
No, absolutely. I mean, the internet was just starting to come to fruition. The early '90s, really.
Yeah.
Started accessible to people, and it's funny. My sister had one of the first portable IBM, what they called a portable computer, and it was the size of a small suitcase.
Yeah.
And it had a filled-up screen and all this, and it was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. How does Rock and Roll High School Forever come to you?
That was the first. I moved here in October. Auditioned for that was one of the first features I auditioned for.
Mm-hmm.
And I had known the casting director in New York and had submitted myself, and she brought me in for it. And obviously I booked it. And so I moved here in October of '89, booked that in November of '89, or December of '89, started shooting in January. So it was welcome to LA. And which was great. And all of a sudden I was, doing a film, because a lot of people in New York had often told me I would do well in LA just because of my look and the type of actor I was. And so I finally, when I was in New York after, and I was sort of tired of New York by the time I left, but I was struggling to get auditions because back then there were 2 TV shows back then, and there was some film production, but not a ton. There was Woody Allen, and that was pretty much it. And so the few movies I auditioned for back there, I got close to getting. I had callbacks and moved in several times. But, they cast The Natural out of there, the Robert Redford movie, and I had 3 callbacks for that to play one of the team baseball guys, because I'd played baseball all through high school.
Mm-hmm.
But, so as soon as I got here, there was so much more work here. And it wasn't, ironic, but also thrilling to the first thing I auditioned for. I got, and it was a really fun part.
Yeah, had you seen the original?
I had, and what was interesting was originally they were, because the Ramones made that, a big name for themselves doing the soundtrack for it.
Mm-hmm.
And originally they had lined up to get the Red Hot Chili Peppers to do Rock and Roll High School Forever, but sort of what happened with Corey and some of his issues, I think they balked at it and said, no, we're not interested. So,
wow, that's interesting.
The story I heard, but yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, this was one of those movies I used to watch over and over again throughout my childhood on HBO and Cinemax. I just still love it to this day. It's just as good as the first one, I think, if not better. It's got so many great gags in it.
And it's got a great cast. I mean, really some fun people that, and Charles Nolan and I, who play the two sort of wacky security guards to Mary Verneu's character, we just had so much fun. And Deborah Brock, who was the director, was open to us just playing. And she and I got to be fairly close. And I remember, we were out at lunch one day. We were talking just about how, because she'd come up through Roger Corman's production company as an editor. And often Roger made a lot of his, if you wanted to direct, you needed to learn how to edit, because then beforehand, then you would know what shots you needed to put the movie together.
Right.
As opposed to being a first-time director who's just like, well, I guess I need this, or I guess I need that. And so she had told me that she'd had dinner with him before her first day of shooting, and had sort of talked to her and said, listen, when you're on set, if it comes down to your choice or the actor's choice, take the actor's choice, because that's what you hired them for. So be open to their creative input, and she was great that way. And I also ended up meeting the second unit director, was Worth Keeter, on that movie. And he and I became very good friends, and I ended up doing, I think, 8 movies that Worth directed. So it was a great experience, and I had so much fun.
I have had Leanne Curtis on. She's she's a character.
Leanne's awesome. So we got to know each other a lot on that set and hung out, and just that whole group of the kids on that movie were pretty tight. And Corey was certainly going through some of his struggles at the time that have been since chronicled, and the life he lived in, what he had to put up with being a child star and some of the stuff. And Corey was, not at his best during that movie. And he and I did a movie years later, and called it, what was it called? A Safe Place, A Dangerous Place. And I remember him coming to my, and I knew he was on it when I got cast, and he came to my trailer, and we had a real long conversation about sort of rock and roll high school. And he was very gracious and open, and actually had apologized. He said, I was not at my best during that, and I want to apologize. And I just thought it was such a stand-up thing to do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, didn't he get arrested during the movie?
What's that?
Didn't he get arrested during the movie?
Yes, he did. He got caught with a bunch of drugs toward the end of the movie.
Right.
And if I recall, and that was sort of obviously him dealing with the stuff that he was wrestling with. And but obviously years later he got clean, and so happy that he's been able to move on from that.
Yeah. I mean, so look at the stuff going on now with that documentary he made and stuff.
Well, again, those kids, and I, obviously that's Corey's experience, and I can't comment on it.
Right.
But clearly that has been a theme in a lot of industries, and especially in the entertainment industry, as we're seeing with the stuff that happened with Harvey Weinstein and that kind of stuff. So it seems a bit naive to think that would not have happened to children if it was happening to adults.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think people should focus more on, protecting the children than the adults at this point,
Well, we've seen some movement in that, even back when you thought about, the young kids in the 40s and the 50s who lost all their money, was taken advantage of them. And then you've got the Jackie Coogan rule.
Yeah.
Jackie Coogan law, which basically demands that some of the payment be put into a trust that can't be touched by parents or managers, so that the kids ultimately don't earn millions of dollars and have nothing to show for it by the time they turn 18. So you hope that that kind of exposure, or shining a light on some of those abuses, that it would cause movement towards they're protecting the kids when they're on set.
Mm-hmm. Do you still talk to Charles Nolan?
Occasionally we'll run into each other at auditions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, it was my first movie, so I have such fond memories of it. We had so much fun together just playing those roles. And just, you know, Deborah just gave us so much rope, and, you know, we would come up with stuff, and she would just love it, and it was just really a free creative experience for me.
Yeah, you both are so great together in that. That P-test scene is hilarious.
And that was, a lot of that was just improvising. I mean, it was on the page, but Worth actually directed that scene. Worth Peter, who I spoke of earlier. And, you know, again, he was just, you know, hey, here's the ball, run with it. And we just had such a good time.
Yeah. How was Mary Woronov? I heard she can be intimidating.
You know, we got along instantly. I mean, she was awesome. Mm-hmm. And, you know, very creative and very talented. And I had known of her from some of the other movies, so it was a thrill to work with her. But, yeah, we got along famously from the instant we, you know, met. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, she was just sort of a force because of who she was as an actress. And that's always fun to work with. But, no, there was no, you know, she was a pleasure to work with. There was nothing high maintenance or anything like that at all.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, Michael Cerveris, who plays Eagle Bauer, I actually think he did a much better job than Clint Howard did in the original.
He was great. I mean, he just had that energy and that dynamic and, you know, sort of that, it's kind of like, you know, you look at that character that's similar in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, that kind of, I got it all together, I'm the cool guy.
Damone, yeah.
And so he was great. I mean, I thought the whole cast was great, and it was fun, and Larry Linville's in it, and you know, it's got a lot of great people in it.
A lot of great people, yeah. And then you did Illicit Behavior.
Yes, and that was with Keeter. He directed Illicit Behavior. Mm-hmm. And actually, the next movie I actually did was Out on a Limb with Matthew Broderick and John C. Reilly. Yeah. It was the next movie that I booked, and John and I played these drunken backwoods brothers. And that was the first studio thing I had auditioned for and booked. And, I mean, it was a big deal. That script had been kicking around. It was written by two twins. And it had been kicking around for years. At one point, Val Kilmer was attached to play the part. Mm-hmm. And the rumor is that they wanted Julie Roberts for the girl, and, you know, and I don't know, can't verify this, but supposedly Val Kilmer said, who's Julie Roberts? And so, but the movie had been greenlit and stopped 2 or 3 times before it got picked up by Universal, and, or Universal did. I think Universal always owned it. But it had been greenlit 2 or 3 times before Matthew got attached. And then Francis Weber, the director of that, who has written and directed so many French movies that were very successful in France and then were made into American movies here, like 4 or 5, 6. And so, and he had done Three Amigos, which was a huge success. Yeah. And then they did Out on a Limb. And Out on a Limb was just sort of this, ended up being kind of this poor stepchild. Nobody quite knew what to do with it. And they ended up changing the original script because after we shot it, they did some reshoots and made it this whole sort of, you know, a little girl reporting on her summer, the young girl who plays Matthew's half-sister in it. Yeah. And turned it into more of a child thing as opposed to, it really was intended as an adult comedy. And they just kind of opened it and shut it down in a week, which is too bad because it's one of those movies that also had a huge sort of resurgence on, you know, videotape and DVD and streaming, but it was a huge box office failure.
Yeah, I remember seeing TV previews for Out on a Limb, and I think they were promoting it like it was going to be another Ferris Bueller because both Matthew Broderick and Jeffrey Jones were in it.
Right, and also it originally was called Welcome to Buzzsaw, and Buzzsaw, and I saw the crew jacket that says Welcome to Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw was the town, that mountain town that he gets stuck in. And
Yeah.
I thought it was a dumb choice on the studio's part because they changed it to Out on a Limb, and just recently Shirley MacLaine had released her book, Out on a Limb, which was this metaphysical, story of out-of-body experiences that she'd had. And I thought, you're going to now name this movie after what was just recently a very popular book. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was, a perfect storm of the wrong decisions to make for a movie. And it failed miserably, unfortunately.
Yeah, I talked to somebody who had a similar experience with the marketing of a movie. Yeah, I don't understand a lot of those corporate decisions,
Yeah, but, it's their money, I guess.
Yeah.
They get to do with what they want.
Yeah, which is sad. But Illicit Behavior, though, has such a crazy cast because you got Robert Davi, Joan Severance, Lonnie Burr from the Mickey Mouse Club, and Kent McCord from Adam 12.
And you've also got, that was like the testosterone set of all things because those guys were all these, Jack Scalia, and you've got, why am I forgetting his name? The guy who did Extremities, tremendous actor. Anyway, it was just like this male-dominated, movie, and it's amazing because I worked with Russ Keto on a lot of movies, and he's one of these guys who's from the Carolinas, and he's just low-key, and he would deal with a lot of the movies we did were that sort of B-plus movies, mm-hmm. and constantly you're dealing with these sort of actors that have egos, and I've never seen a director handle that better than I have seen Worth. So it was, but that set too. I mean, it was really fun, and while I was only on that set for one day, we shot all that bar scene where he comes in and we have that big fight out in the bar. But that was a lot of fun too. We shot that over in that restaurant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Near Warner Brothers. I forget what that place is called.
That actor you were talking about was James Russo.
Yeah, so again, you had all these macho guys with Davi and Russo and Scalia, and it was pretty wild.
Yeah. On Out on a Limb, how was Francis Weber?
He was amazing. I mean, very creative. He and Matthew sort of did not see eye to eye through a lot of the movie, which I, don't really know what that was about, but he was amazing and very creative, and he has that French sensibility. If you've seen any of his movies, Le Chien, which was made into The Goat, The Man with One Red Shoe, which was made into The Man with One Black Shoe here, The Toy, which was made into the Jackie Gleason movie here, Le Comprare, which was made into Buddy Buddy, which was Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. I mean, he just had this history. He was one of the original writers on La Cage aux Folles. So the guy clearly has that sense of farcical comedy. And for whatever reason, he and Matthew just did not, meld. And sometimes that happens,
Yeah. He did this movie called Partners, which is a movie you couldn't get away with nowadays, where Ryan O'Neal is a homophobic cop who has to go undercover living with a gay man because he's investigating murders in the gay community. And it's a very funny, farcical kind of a movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, the French sensibility, they have that satire and, farce, and they always push sort of the limits of what's safe and comfortable, which is why I like his movies. And but he was a great guy, really sort of this dashing older gentleman. At the time I worked with him, very, very handsome and very French, So he was good.
Yeah. How was doing Clean Slate?
blast. I mean, that also has this cast that is just mind-boggling. You know, I'm sitting at lunch with James Earl Jones and Michael Gambon, and it's like, you know, Kevin Pollak and, you know, Dana Carvey, and had a really fun part in that, you know, sort of, I'm married to Dana Carvey's ex-wife, and so it was just one of those sets that was amazing and just really fun, and, you know, I'm sitting here working with people I've dreamed of working with my whole life, you know, and it was great. I had an interesting conversation with Dana just because, you know, they never really found where he fit in the movie industry.
Yeah.
And the timing of Clean Slate was really also, again, the stars lining up. I mean, Groundhog Day had come out recently.
Yeah.
And so, again, that sort of repetitive thing, even though they were completely different. But that also, it just sort of never found its place in the marketplace, which was unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. My dad had his dad as a business teacher in high school.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. My dad said his father had no sense of humor, and I've heard Dana Carvey say that, yeah, his father was not a very loving father, unfortunately.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, he was a great guy, also very generous, crazy talented. I mean, it was just a joy to watch him sort of riff, which he would do at lunch, which was just amazing, you know.
Yeah, I've heard him talk about this movie on Kevin Pollak's old podcast that he had, and he said that, you know, this movie kind of killed his career as a leading man, you know. They just didn't know how to market him.
No, and he said that even at the time they were doing it. I said, you must be excited. I remember sitting with him at lunch and said, you must be excited about this. He said, you know, if this does not go, this is kind of an important thing for him because again, he's so talented, they just don't know what to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and whether the industry sees him as he's this short guy, but he's quite attractive, he's charming, but he's just crazy talented, and they just didn't know what to do with him. And it was clearly, even that movie, they weren't sure what to do with him.
And this is right around the time Jim Carrey is hitting it big, too.
Right. And, you know, you had a lot of guys that were doing sketch comedy that were scoring in movies, and stand-ups that were scoring in movies. I mean, Kevin Pollak started as a stand-up, if I believe, you know, and used to do that, so, and still does. So you were getting a lot of that kind of comedian, sketch people, Saturday Night Live, you know, in living color people that were all of a sudden just popping in movies and just nailing it.
Mm-hmm. And then the Pop Warner football movie, Little Giants.
You know, that was also so fun, and again, another one of these movies that it's funny because I teach acting now, and a lot of my students are of an age where they grew up with these movies, and when they have this realization that I was in these movies, they've watched 100 times. And but that, you know, started, I don't know if you remember at the time, there was a McDonald's commercial about little kids football.
Mm-hmm.
And Spielberg came to his writer and said, write me a movie based on this. So you saw these dads creating a goal post and a kid kicking a football through. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And that movie got rewritten so many times, because I was on that movie for over 3.5 months,
Mm-hmm.
which was amazing. But every day on my doorstep there would be a complete rewrite. We went through the script colors of rewrites about 4 times. And it was mind-boggling. They just also didn't quite know what to do with it, you know. And then they plug in John Madden, and they plug in, you know, some ex-football players. I think Emmett Smith's in it. And, you know, they also didn't know that movie was so huge in DVD outside of the theaters. It did not do great in the theaters. But it's really a charming movie with a great message.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick Moranis was great, and so was, you know, Ed O'Neill. So it was really fun.
Yeah, I heard. I think it was Ed O'Neill said that him and Rick Moranis bonded over the fact that they both had awkwardness with John Hughes in their past. And I was reading too that this is pretty interesting that before they were cast, Gary Busey and Randy Quaid was cast.
Oh yeah, I mean I can totally see that too. You know, the one, the nice sort of charming guy and the sort of tough, pain in the butt guy, which is what the Ed O'Neill character ended up being. But yeah, it was, again, to me, there's no place I enjoy more than being on set. And even to this day, I get enamored going there. I get enamored when I book a job. It's still just, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
So, on set, I'm very happy.
And you had a recurring role on The Practice.
Yeah, clearly that was sort of a career-defining moment because that show, ended up just the number one show when David Kelly was just in his stride, as he was later in Boston Public and Boston Legal and Picket Fences and Name It. And I'd done one episode of Picket Fences, and I'd auditioned for LA Law like 100 times and never got cast. And then I got called to do this new series, and it was a one-day guest star. And it's funny because I'd auditioned I went in originally for a part in that episode as a photographer who is remembering an attack. And I auditioned that day, and then they called me back the next day, and they said, you're not really right for that. They were looking for an artsy guy with long hair, and that wasn't me. And so they said, would you come back and read for this cop? So I came back and read for the cop, and then as I was walking out the door, Jeffrey Kramer, who was the producer on the show, in the room said, hey, can you hang on a second? And they came and handed me the part for George Fogelman. And it was that episode where they meet at the restaurant. They've been online dating, Eleanor and he, and she rejects him. And, they said, take a few minutes, and I came in and I got booked on that part. And had a great time, and Cameron Manheim was, wonderful and charming, and we got along just very well. And then a few weeks later, I get called from, head of casting, and said, they saw the dailies, and they're just over the moon for your performance. They just think you're amazing. And so they got that episode, the next episode, where I come and sue her for the infliction of emotional distress. And that was the episode that Cameron submitted and won her Emmy for. And when she wrote her book, she sent me a signed copy that said, shows a picture of her winning her Emmy in the back, and said, it was our episode.
Oh.
And so then, that just rolled in, and then George shows up with a head in his bag, and off we go. And I mean, it doesn't get much better than when David E. Kelly is writing for you. And I remember sort of like feeling I'd arrived at Hollywood one day as I was coming out of the set, and we shot down at Manhattan Beach Studios, and I was walking out of the set of the practice, out of the stages for the practice, and across the street were the stages for Ally McBeal, and they'd just been nominated for an Emmy for Best Show. And David comes walking out of the door, and I come walking out of the door, and we meet in the middle of the street, and we're walking down the street back down to his production office. And we're chatting, and I said, oh, congrats on the Emmy knob. And he's like, yeah, they've always kind of felt like they were, second best to the practice, and now they got nominated. And he said, you're in town, right? You always thought I was a New York actor, which I obviously studied and trained in New York, but he said, you're local, right? I said, yeah. He said, because I got some ideas and stuff I really, do, and I'm just on cloud nine, and I'm walking down, the sun is setting, it's just David Kelly and I walking down the street. I'm thinking, where's my soundtrack? Where's the boom camera that's going to capture this moment? And it was just one of those amazing, career moments. And obviously, I'm still recognized to this day for that role. People have such a visceral reaction to that character because he was they loved him even when they found, they were struggling with the fact they felt for him, and then he turns out to be this violent killer, and they didn't know how to feel. And I still, when I'm in the store or airports, or people will see me and go, wait, you're that guy, and then they just recoil. Like, oh my God, you scared me so much on that. So it was amazing. It was so much fun.
Wonderful. Yeah, Cameron Manheim, she's so talented. And I saw that she lost an awful lot of weight now.
I saw we played in a celebrity charity poker event on Sunday, and I haven't seen her in a long time. And while she was sitting down, but, she did seem, she looked great. And, she's always just such a joy of a person. She always had such a light about her. That was great. So, I hadn't seen her in a long time, so we were chatting via while we were online, just kind of catching up a little bit, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm. And then I remember you played the sheriff in Garfield.
Yeah, so another one of those was when our students left and they realized that, oh my God, you're in this movie. I remember at the time a buddy of mine called me, DVDs were the thing then.
Yeah.
And so my son, we watched Garfield 5 times a day. And this was a guy who directed in a movie called The Mystery of Spoon River. And, but that too, it was hugely successful at the box office, made close to $100 million.
Yeah.
And then the D sales were just stratospheric. And it's too bad because I think they really messed up Garfield 2. And I remember I reached out to the producer when I heard that they were doing a Garfield 2, and I said, you've got to include my character because he got out of my, out of my compound, and I should be hunting him down. And the second movie did not do well at all. So they took him to England, and they did this whole thing. And so, but yeah, Garfield was a blast too because it was so interesting because of that live action animation capture. We had to do every take at the time 4 times. We would do it one where we were miming carrying Garfield. We would do it one with an actual stuffed version of Garfield that they had made. And they had made these ones with individual hairs that cost like $30,000 a piece. Mm-hmm. We would have to do one where they had a mirror ball on a stick to see about light bouncing. And then we'd do one with a black ball on a stick that would absorb light. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't have all of those, because all objects, all people, humans, things absorb light and bounce light. So it was fascinating on set to have to deal with that. Especially that scene in the compound where I'm carrying him and I put him down for adoption. So, and it was funny because the guys who do the special effects came to me and said, when you pick him up, can you make sure your fingers on your hand are together? Because if they're separate, we have to fill in hairs between your fingers. Mm-hmm. Because we have to deal with that much detail for the special effects.
Did they have Bill Murray or a guy on set do Garfield's voice?
There was somebody doing Garfield's voice, but it was an AD, and Bill Murray, because I remember talking to the director, Peter Hewitt, and I said, and the producer said, who's doing Garfield? They said, well, our wish list is Bill Murray, but we can't get a hold of him. And obviously, Bill is famous for not being reachable. So it was, and Peter and I became friends too, and at lunch afterwards, I said, how was it being in the, room with him when he was doing it? He said, amazing, just watching the man work. So they were lucky that they ultimately got him to do the voice, but nobody else, who else was going to do Garfield's voice but Bill Murray.
Mm-hmm. A couple of years later, they did the Yogi Bear movie with Dan Aykroyd doing the voice, but that wasn't as successful. But I think Bill Murray did a great job.
Yeah, well, the guy was just crazy talented, so
yeah,
it was a good choice.
Mm-hmm. So do you have anything new coming out?
Yeah, I have a couple movies that are in the can that we're waiting to hear. I was working on that TV show Deputy that was on Fox. I had a recurring role on that, and unfortunately they were canceled. But that was a great experience. We were shooting that in New Mexico. I have a movie, a faith-based movie called Church People, which is a comedy, which is really fun. And teaser and really enjoyed the script, and it just floated around forever. And finally, Stephen Baldwin saw the teaser and found funding for it, and was originally called Youth Group, and now they've changed it to Church People, and it's supposed to be coming out. Well, they've had a couple times where they thought it was, and it wasn't, and they've certainly postponed it because of the pandemic. So they're aiming either late this year or early next year in whatever iteration that is. Now we're dealing with COVID and that kind of stuff. But that's a really fun project that I really had a great time shooting, and it really has a nice message. And I think what else I got coming up in the can. A couple fun shorts that I did, one called Synth, that is making the film festival circuit right now, and about artificial intelligence, and I played a scientist / doctor who has created this, and it has a real interesting twist in it at the end, and that's been great. And and a couple things in development, and just waiting to see when they go. And there's a movie that I'm going to be going down to Colombia to shoot, and that'll be real interesting. I'll be the only English speaker in the whole cast, and my character is in an asylum in Colombia, and my character is obviously American and does not speak Spanish. And I shot a really great movie in Guatemala that should come out in the next year. It's called Fuego, and it's a wonderful story about the indigenous people of Guatemala and the struggles they've had with corruption and with poverty. And I mean, Guatemala is interesting because it has 27 indigenous people, different, and they tend to be very competitive with each other. And often the political people, but the politicians use that against them to sort of divide the people. And it's based on a true story of this man who started a nonprofit to go down and help the indigenous people sort of be able to help the farmers and help be able to support themselves in a much better lifestyle. And a lot of the women down there, they cook over these open fires, and they make, tortillas and stuff like that, and they have this tremendous ill effects because of cooking over open smoke. A lot of them, they get burned a lot of them have lung issues, and his company created this stove that they will let them purchase on long term with no interest that allows them to become self-sufficient, and it's an amazing organization. And so this is the story of this man who goes down there, and the pushback he gets, not only from the federal government, but the Guatemalan government and the cartels and all that stuff. So it's a fascinating movie. It's called Fuego, based on an active volcano that is in Guatemala. Guatemala has this chain of active volcanoes that run parallel to the ocean. And Guatemala is beautiful. I've never been there. The country is spectacular. The people are wonderful. I was down there for 2 weeks shooting that last year, and we're hoping that that's going to come out soon. So those are the two that are in the can, ready to go, or about ready to go, is the Church People and Fuego.
Oh, that's awesome, Michael. You do sound very blessed there, I have to say.
Yeah, life is good, and we got to even look at it with where we are now, that things are always working out, and there's nothing really wrong here. This is all part of the contrast of the life we live, and if you can see the world through that lens, I think all it does is offer a healing power and healing for everything that we're going through. And, we've always had turbulent times in our in our world, and out of that often come great times. So even out of this, we have to look at everything as a blessing, and we can move forward. Not be caught up, just get mired down in the negativity of it. We got to keep a positive momentum going, and then we create a positive outcome.
Very well said, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Appreciate it, and good luck with everything, and we will talk again soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Take care. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Michael Monks. Ain't he a cool dude? Nice guy. Great stories. I like him a lot. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.